A nun was left to hang to death until a mountain man appeared and did the unthinkable. Sister Maria had spent most of her life devoted to helping others. From the moment she joined the convent, she had felt a calling to serve those who were forgotten or in need. Her heart was gentle, but her determination was strong. She often volunteered to travel to remote villages hidden high in the mountains, places that were nearly impossible to reach. The villagers there had little contact with the outside world, and their lives were harsh and lonely. Many were sick, poor, or struggling just to find enough food to survive. Sister Maria believed that even one person's help could make a real difference, and she never hesitated to bring what she could to them. The path to these villages was not easy. Narrow trails clung to the side of steep cliffs, and rocks sometimes crumbled underfoot. Mist often covered the mountain in the mornings, hiding the path and making each step uncertain. Many locals warned her not to go alone, but Sister Maria had always preferred solitude during her trips. She felt that traveling alone allowed her to focus completely on the people she was helping. Her faith and her careful attention to the terrain had kept her safe many times before, and she trusted in her own skill and judgment. One chilly morning, Sister Maria packed a small bag with supplies. She carried bread, cheese, and some blankets for families she knew were struggling. There were also a few jars of medicine for those who had fallen ill. She dressed warmly in layers, tying her hood tightly to protect herself from the cold wind. As she began her journey, she admired the quiet beauty of the mountains. The snow-capped peaks rose majestically in the distance, and the air smelled fresh and clean. Birds called out in the trees, and the sound of a distant waterfall echoed through the valley. Even though the path was dangerous, she felt a sense of peace as she walked, believing that her purpose was greater than any fear. Hours passed as she carefully navigated the narrow trail. As she stopped occasionally to rest or take small sips of water from a flask she carried. Her steps were deliberate, always checking the stability of the ground beneath her feet. Sister Maria knew that one wrong step could lead to a deadly fall. Yet, she also knew that the villagers were counting on her. She thought about little Anna, a girl who had been sick for weeks, and old Mateo, who could barely walk but had always welcomed her warmly. Their faces filled her mind, reminding her why she risked the climb. Her concern for their well-being pushed her forward despite the danger. As she reached a particularly steep part of the trail, a sense of unease crept over her. The wind had grown stronger, whipping around the rocks and making her hood flap violently. She paused, gripping the edge of the cliff with one hand for balance. Something about the silence felt different that day. Usually the mountains were quiet, but now there was a strange tension in the air. She shrugged it off at first, thinking it was just her imagination, but she moved with extra caution. Every step had to be precise. Her mind remained focused, reviewing the path ahead and planning her moves carefully. Suddenly, she noticed movement up ahead. At first, she thought it might be a goat or some other animal, but the shapes moved with purpose. A group of men appeared on the trail, their expressions serious. Sister Maria's heart began to pound. She had heard stories of bandits in these mountains, men who attacked travelers for their belongings. She froze, unsure of what to do. The men's eyes were fixed on her, and it became clear that they had been waiting, watching for someone to come along this path. Fear tried to grip her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She remembered her training and her own ability to think clearly, even in dangerous situations. The men stepped closer, blocking the trail. Sister Maria held up her hands, trying to show that she meant no harm. "Please," she said softly, "I am only here to help people in the villages." But the men ignored her words. They were harsh and unrelenting, and they moved quickly, overpowering her before she could react. She struggled, but their strength was too great. Within moments, she found herself tied up and pulled toward the edge of a cliff. Panic surged through her, but she tried to remain composed. She had been in difficult situations before, and she knew that fear could make things worse. Her mind raced, looking for any way to escape. The bandits left her dangling over the edge, tied securely, but not completely immobilized. The drop below was terrifying, and the rocks seemed to stretch endlessly into a shadowy void. The wind blew harshly, chilling her to the bone. Sister Maria's hands ached from the ropes cutting into her skin, and she fought the urge to scream. She knew that making noise could attract more danger, but staying silent felt almost impossible. She tried to shift her position, testing the strength of the ropes, but every movement was painful. Her body shook from the cold, and exhaustion began to set in. The situation was worse than anything she had faced before. As the hours passed, Sister Maria focused on keeping her mind clear. She prayed silently, asking for strength and guidance. She thought about the people she had been helping and the work that still needed to be done. Giving up was not an option for her, no matter how dire the circumstances seemed. She tried to wiggle her hands free from the bindings, but they were tight and skillfully tied. Still, she refused to surrender to despair. She reminded herself that she had survived treacherous climbs, harsh winters, and difficult journeys before. This, too, could be overcome if she stayed calm and patient. Night fell, and the temperature dropped even further. The darkness was complete, making the drop below seem even more frightening. Sister Maria shivered uncontrollably, but she refused to lose hope. She focused on her breathing, trying to conserve energy and remain alert. The wind howled around her, and small rocks occasionally tumbled down the cliffside. She realized that her situation was extremely dangerous, yet she also knew that her determination and faith were stronger than the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Each passing minute became a test of endurance, courage, and willpower. While Sister Maria struggled, far above her in the mountains, someone else was moving. Elias, the man known as the Mountain Man, had noticed unusual disturbances near the cliff. He was a reclusive figure, rarely seen by anyone in the villages. People spoke of him in whispers, saying he could survive in the wild when others could not. He had learned to read the mountains like a book, understanding the signs of danger and the movements of animals or humans. That morning, something had caught his attention. A shadow moving along the cliff, faint cries carried by the wind. It was enough to draw him out of his solitude. Elias approached cautiously, moving silently along hidden paths that only he knew. His instincts told him that someone was in danger. As he drew closer, he could see a figure suspended near the edge of the cliff. At first he could not tell if it was alive or not, but the small movements confirmed it. The person was struggling, fighting to survive. He knew that helping her would be risky. The drop was deadly, and the ropes that bound her could make rescue nearly impossible. Still, he did not hesitate. There was no time to wait. His skill, courage, and understanding of the mountain would be the only things that could save her. Back on the cliff, Sister Maria's strength was fading. Her muscles ached, her hands were raw from the ropes, and the cold seemed to seep into her very bones. But still, she refused to give up. She thought about the villages, the children she had been helping, and the promise she had made to herself to always serve others. Each memory became a source of strength. Even in the darkness, she could feel a small spark of hope that kept her going. Little did she know someone was coming to answer her silent prayers, a person whose courage and skill were as remarkable as her own determination. The night air was cold and still, carrying an eerie silence across the mountains. Sister Maria remained suspended over the cliff, her body aching and her mind alert. She tried to conserve her strength, but her fingers had started to grow numb from the cold, and the ropes were cutting painfully into her wrists. Every shift of her body made her muscles scream, yet she refused to panic. She whispered silent prayers, calling upon the courage and faith that had guided her through so many difficult journeys. Deep down, she believed that help would come, even though the hours passed slowly and the world below seemed empty and unforgiving. Far above the cliff, Elias carefully made his way along a narrow, hidden path. He had grown up in these mountains, learning every ridge, ledge, and secret passage. While others feared the wild and its dangers, he felt at home. His life had been one of solitude, filled with careful observation and quiet survival. Yet, when he noticed the shadow near the cliff earlier in the day, something stirred inside him. It was not curiosity alone. He felt a pull toward the danger, a sense that someone needed him. He moved quickly but cautiously, aware that the wrong step could send him tumbling into the abyss below. As he approached the edge, Elias could see the full extent of Sister Maria's peril. The ropes binding her were thick, expertly tied, and had been secured in a way that left her dangling far from the ledge. The wind tugged at her, swinging her slightly back and forth, and every movement seemed to threaten her life. Elias studied the situation carefully. He could not rush in blindly. The wrong approach could make everything worse. He examined the rock face above and below her, planning his descent with precision. Every movement had to be calculated, every step deliberate. Sister Maria, sensing movement above her, lifted her head weakly. Her eyes widened when she saw a figure emerging from the darkness. A man, moving with confidence and skill across the dangerous cliffside. Her heart leapt, hope igniting in the cold night. She called out softly, her voice trembling but firm. "Please, help me!" Ellis heard her clearly and responded with a calm nod, signaling that she was not alone. Even in her fear, the presence of this stranger gave her strength, a reassurance that she might survive after all. Elias began his descent. The rocks were slippery from the evening mist, and the wind threatened to unbalance him at every step. He moved with the grace of someone who had spent a lifetime in the mountains, using ropes, anchors, and his knowledge of the terrain to protect himself. His eyes never left Sister Maria, assessing the best way to reach her safely. He could see the exhaustion on her face, the cold biting into her skin, and the desperation in her eyes. Every second mattered. He whispered words of encouragement, letting her know he was there. "Hold on. I will get you down safely," he said calmly. As Elias drew closer, Sister Maria tried to steady herself. Her body was trembling from fatigue, cold, and fear. She had learned to endure hardship in her life, but this situation tested every ounce of her endurance. The ropes binding her cut into her skin, leaving marks that would last for days, and the constant swinging made it difficult to focus. Still, she followed Elias's instructions carefully, listening to his calm voice above the roar of the wind. She adjusted her position as he directed, trusting him completely, even though she did not know him. The descent was slow and tense. Elias moved carefully, securing ropes along the rocks and testing each anchor point before committing his weight. Every movement required precision, every step calculated to avoid slipping or losing balance. Sister Maria watched in awe as he navigated the cliff with skill that seemed almost impossible. He was strong but patient, methodical but aware of every small detail. She could feel herself being guided to safety, but the danger was far from over. One misstep could mean disaster for both of them. Meanwhile, the bandits who had captured her were nowhere to be seen. They had disappeared into the darkness, likely afraid of the terrain and unwilling to risk the climb. Sister Maria realized that she had been lucky in more ways than one. She had been left alone, which gave her a chance to survive, but only because Elias had arrived when he did. She silently thanked the unknown man above her, grateful for his courage and skill. Her heart raced, not with fear alone, but with hope, as she realized that she might live to continue her mission of helping others. As they continued, Elias reached the point where he could cut the ropes. He did so carefully, ensuring that Sister Maria would not fall even a fraction of a second too soon. The moment the bindings were removed, she sagged against the rock, weak but conscious. Elias caught her gently, supporting her weight as he began the ascent back to a safer ledge. Sister Maria clung to him, trusting his strength and knowledge. Every movement upward was exhausting for both of them, but they worked together, communicating in whispers and hand signals to maintain balance and security. The climb took what felt like hours. Sister Maria's muscles burned and the cold continued to bite at her skin, but Elias's presence gave her strength. He remained calm, focused, and reassuring, never allowing panic or fear to take hold. He knew that rushing could be fatal, so he moved deliberately, ensuring that each step was safe before continuing. Sister Maria, in turn, followed his lead, careful not to make sudden movements that could endanger them both. They were a team in that moment, bound together by necessity, trust, and the desire to survive. Finally, after a long and exhausting climb, they reached a more secure area on the cliff. Elias helped Sister Maria sit down, wrapping her in blankets he had carried for emergencies. He offered her water and small sips of warm tea, which she gratefully accepted. Her hands and face were red from the cold, but her spirit was lifted by the knowledge that she was no longer in immediate danger. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to breathe freely, feeling the tension in her body begin to ease. As they rested, Sister Maria asked Elias how he had known she was in trouble. He smiled faintly, explaining that he had noticed unusual signs in the mountains that morning, disturbances in the snow, broken branches, and faint sounds carried by the wind. He had followed the signs, guided by instinct and experience, until he found her. Sister Maria marveled at his skill, realizing that she had encountered a person who understood the mountains in a way she never could. His courage, knowledge, and willingness to risk himself for a stranger were remarkable. They stayed on the ledge for a while longer, allowing Sister Maria to regain strength. She could feel her body slowly thawing from the cold, and the pain from the ropes began to fade. Elias remained vigilant, scanning the area for any signs of danger. Although the immediate threat had passed, he knew the mountains could be unpredictable, and he was determined to ensure her safe passage down to the village. Sister Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude, realizing that her life had been saved by someone she barely knew. As dawn approached, Elias prepared to guide her down the final stretch of the mountain. The path was still treacherous, but with his help, it was manageable. Sister Maria followed closely, her trust in him absolute. Every step brought them closer to safety, and she began to imagine the village waiting below, the familiar faces of those she had been helping. The thought of continuing her work, of being able to serve others once more, filled her with renewed determination. She had survived the night, and now she would continue her mission with a deeper understanding of courage and hope. By the time they reached a safer area near the bottom of the mountain, the sun had risen fully. Light spilled across the valley, illuminating the rugged beauty of the terrain. Birds began to sing, and the air felt warmer. Sister Maria looked at Elias with gratitude and awe. He had risked everything to save a stranger, navigating dangers that few could even imagine. She knew that she would never forget his courage, his skill, and the quiet determination that had kept her alive through the night. The villagers, still asleep at this early hour, would soon witness a miracle. Sister Maria had been left to face certain danger alone, Yet she had survived, thanks to the intervention of someone who understood the mountains better than anyone else. Her heart swelled with gratitude, and she knew that the experience would change her forever. It was a night of fear and desperation, yes, but also of hope, courage, and the remarkable strength of the human spirit. The sun had climbed higher, casting warm light across the valley, yet the mountain remained a place of danger. Sister Maria had been rescued from the cliff, but she was not yet safe. The descent to the village was still treacherous, and every step required careful attention. The wind carried a chill, and patches of ice hidden under rocks made the path slippery. Her muscles ached from the night's ordeal, and her hands were still sore from the ropes that had bound her. She leaned on Elias, trusting his guidance completely, knowing that her survival depended on him as much as on her own strength. Elias moved with a calm determination. Every step was deliberate, every choice calculated to avoid disaster. He had spent decades navigating these mountains, reading the rocks and the soil like an open book. He knew where loose stones could give way and where hidden crevices might trap a foot. Sister Maria followed his lead, adjusting her movements to match his careful pace. She could feel her heart racing, not with fear now, but with adrenaline, a mix of relief and anticipation. She knew that one wrong move could undo all the progress they had made, and she refused to take the risk. As they continued, the silence of the mountains was broken by distant sounds, rocks shifting, wind whistling through trees, and the faint echo of animals moving unseen. Every noise reminded Sister Maria of how close she had come to disaster. She thought back to the moment when the bandits had left her dangling over the cliff. The memory was still sharp in her mind. The terror, the helplessness, the cold that had bitten through her layers of clothing. She shivered, but this time it was from remembrance rather than exposure. She had survived that night, but the memory would never leave her. Elias noticed her trembling and spoke softly. "You are safe now.
Keep moving with me, one step at a time."
His voice was calm, steady, and filled with quiet authority. Sister Maria drew comfort from it. It was remarkable to feel such reassurance from someone she barely knew. There was no fear in his demeanor, no hesitation. His confidence gave her courage. She realized that courage could take many forms. It was not just facing danger alone, but also guiding someone through it, staying calm when panic would be natural. Elias embodied that kind of courage, and it inspired her to keep going despite exhaustion. The trail began to narrow, and the mountain rose sharply to one side. Large boulders blocked parts of the path, and loose stones made footing uncertain. Elias paused and assessed the area. "We need to climb carefully over this section," he said. Sister Maria nodded, gripping his hand tightly as he helped her navigate the rocks. Each movement was slow, deliberate, requiring balance and trust. She noticed how every small action Elias took was calculated to minimize risk. He placed his weight carefully, tested the rocks with his hands and feet, and helped her do the same. Step by step they moved forward, the cliff looming above and the valley stretching out below. As they rounded a bend, a sudden sound froze Sister Maria in place. A branch cracked sharply behind them. Her heart skipped a beat. Elias immediately raised a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. They both listened intently. The sound repeated, a faint shuffle, too purposeful to be an animal. Elias's eyes narrowed. "Stay close," he whispered. Sister Maria clutched his arm, unsure if the danger had returned. Her mind raced. Had the bandits come back, or was it just another traveler in the mountains? The uncertainty made her pulse quicken. Every instinct told her to prepare for the worst, yet she had to trust Elias's judgment. The figure appeared slowly, stepping into view. It was not a bandit, but another traveler, a man alone, carrying a heavy pack. He looked startled to see them and quickly stepped aside, giving them room on the narrow path. Elias nodded to him briefly, and they continued. Sister Maria's relief was immense, though tempered by the knowledge that the mountains were unpredictable. Even a small mistake could be fatal. She realized that her survival was not just about escaping danger, but also about staying aware and cautious every moment of the journey. Hours passed as they descended further into the valley. The sunlight grew warmer, and the path gradually became less steep. Sister Maria's body was sore, her legs heavy from fatigue, but her spirit remained strong. She reflected on the events of the past night, the terror, the struggle, and the miraculous arrival of Elias. Each memory reinforced her gratitude and admiration for him. She had believed she was facing death alone, yet a stranger had appeared and risked everything to save her. The experience had changed her understanding of courage, hope, and human kindness. Finally, they reached a point where the trail widened, and trees provided a sense of safety. Elias stopped and looked back at the cliff where Sister Maria had hung. "That was a dangerous place," he said quietly. "Few could have survived it without help." Sister Maria nodded, feeling a mix of awe and humility. She realized that her life had been spared not just by chance, but by skill, bravery, and the willingness of someone to act selflessly. The memory of that night would stay with her forever, a reminder of the fragility of life and the strength found in courage and compassion. As they walked through the trees, Sister Maria asked Elias about his life. He was quiet at first, reluctant to speak of himself, but slowly he shared fragments of his story. He had chosen the mountains as his home long ago, finding peace and purpose in solitude. He had learned to live with nature, understanding its rhythms, dangers, and gifts. Helping others was not something he did for recognition or reward, but because it was right. Sister Maria listened intently, realizing that heroism often came from quiet, steady lives rather than dramatic gestures. Elias's life was simple, yet extraordinary in its courage and integrity. The path began to level out, and the village appeared in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the faint sounds of morning activity reached them. Sister Maria's heart lifted. She could see familiar buildings, recognize familiar trails, and imagine the people waiting for her. The thought of returning to her work, of continuing to serve the villagers, gave her renewed energy. Her exhaustion was still present, but it was mixed with determination and relief. She knew that she would survive, thanks to Elias, and that she could continue her mission with a deeper appreciation for life and human connection. As they approached the village, villagers began to notice them. A few early risers paused, seeing a woman being guided carefully down the trail by a man they had never met. Their expression shifted from curiosity to astonishment as they recognized Sister Maria. Word quickly spread that she had survived the night on the cliff and that a mountain man had saved her. People whispered in awe, marveling at the courage and skill required to perform such a rescue. Sister Maria's heart swelled, not with pride but with gratitude, for her life, for Elias's bravery, and for the lessons she had learned in the mountains. When they finally reached the village, Sister Maria felt a sense of safety and relief wash over her. She was home, surrounded by familiar sights, sounds, and faces. Children ran to greet her, and villagers offered warm blankets and food. Elias remained quietly in the background, watching to ensure she was truly safe before he allowed himself to relax. Sister Maria approached him, tears in her eyes, and whispered a heartfelt thank you. Elias nodded, a faint smile on his face, but he said little. For him, the act of saving her had been its own reward. The bond formed that night, forged through danger and trust, was unspoken but powerful. Sister Maria reflected on the night's events as she recovered. She realized that her faith had been tested in the most extreme way, but it had endured. She had faced death and survived, not by luck alone, but through courage, skill, and the kindness of another human being. The mountains had been harsh and unforgiving, yet they had also been a place of connection and hope. The experience strengthened her resolve to continue her work, knowing that even in the face of danger, compassion and courage could prevail. Even as life returned to normal in the village, Sister Maria could not forget the night on the cliff. She often thought of Elias, the quiet, skilled man who had appeared when she had needed help the most. His courage and presence had been extraordinary, yet he sought no recognition. She realized that heroes sometimes lived quietly, without fanfare, and that their actions could change lives profoundly. The memory of that night would guide her in her work, reminding her that even in darkness, hope could arrive in unexpected ways. The village was stirring as the morning sun climbed higher into the sky. Smoke drifted from chimneys, and the sound of roosters crowing and people beginning their day filled the air. Sister Maria's feet were finally on solid ground, and yet she could hardly believe she had survived the horrors of the night. Her hands were still sore from the ropes, and her body ached from the climb down the mountain. But the fear that had gripped her heart the night before had begun to fade, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude and relief. Elias remained a silent guardian at her side, guiding her through the village streets with steady hands and watchful eyes. Villagers turned to watch as they passed, whispering among themselves. It was not common for Elias to appear in the village, and certainly not to escort a nun through the streets. Many had heard rumors of the mountain man, a mysterious figure who lived alone in the wilderness, feared by some, admired by others. Yet here he was, walking calmly beside Sister Maria, a quiet hero who had risked his life to save someone he had never met. Sister Maria's mind raced as she realized the full magnitude of what had happened. The night on the cliff had been terrifying beyond words, and she had faced the real possibility of death. Yet she had survived, not by chance, but because of Elias's courage, skill, and determination. She thought about the hours he had spent climbing down to her, the careful way he had freed her from the ropes, and the slow, deliberate ascent back to safety. Each step he had taken had been a risk, yet he had moved without hesitation, guided by instinct and compassion. As they reached the small square at the heart of the village, children ran toward them, their eyes wide with curiosity. They had heard the story in bits and pieces from their parents, who had spoken in hushed tones about the nun who had survived the cliff and the mountain man who had saved her. Sister Maria smiled weakly at the children, her heart swelling with warmth. Despite her exhaustion, she felt a sense of peace. She had endured fear, pain, and uncertainty, but she had also witnessed incredible bravery and kindness. It was a lesson she would never forget. The villagers gathered around, offering blankets, warm food, and words of comfort. Sister Maria accepted everything with gratitude, though her attention remained on Elias. She wanted to express her thanks, to acknowledge the risk he had taken, yet words felt inadequate. How could one truly thank someone who had faced death to save a stranger? Elias, however, seemed unconcerned with recognition. He simply nodded, quietly accepting the gratitude without seeking attention or praise. His humility impressed her deeply. In that moment, she realized that true heroism was not about being seen. It was about acting when it mattered most, even if no one knew your name. As Sister Maria rested, she reflected on the events of the night, the memory of dangling over the cliff, the fear that had gripped her heart, and the struggle to stay conscious. All came back vividly. But intertwined with these memories was the image of Elias, descending with skill and determination, guiding her to safety. She realized that the experience had changed her. She had always known courage and faith were important, but now she understood them in a new way. Courage was not just facing danger, it was also trusting others, remaining calm under pressure, and taking action when it was needed most. Elias stayed with her until she felt strong enough to stand on her own. He helped her to a small house where she could rest, offering water, food, and blankets. Sister Maria was overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness and care. He did not rush her, did not demand anything in return. He simply ensured she was safe and comfortable. As she rested, she began to feel the first real sense of relief since the night had begun. The fear and uncertainty that had dominated her thoughts were slowly being replaced by gratitude, admiration, and a sense of wonder at the human spirit. The villagers continued to arrive, bringing gifts and offering assistance. Many had risked climbing partway up the mountain themselves to help, but none had succeeded in reaching her. They marveled at Elias's skill and bravery, realizing that without him, Sister Maria might not have survived. Conversations buzzed with admiration and awe, yet Elias remained quiet, blending into the background. Sister Maria, however, could not let him go unnoticed. She approached him, taking his hands in hers and speaking from the heart. "I will never forget what you have done for me," she said softly. "You saved my life. You have given me a second chance." Elias simply nodded, his expression calm, almost shy, as if the words were unnecessary. Over the next few days, Sister Maria recovered physically and emotionally. Her body healed from the strain of the climb, her hands regained strength, and the bruises and cuts began to fade. But the emotional impact of the experience stayed with her. She found herself reflecting often on the courage required to face danger and the importance of trusting others in moments of need. Elias's actions had shown her that help could come from unexpected places, and that even in the darkest moments, there was hope. She knew that she would carry these lessons with her forever. Elias, for his part, returned to his home in the mountains. He did not linger in the village, preferring the quiet and solitude of the wilderness, yet his presence lingered in the minds and hearts of those he had saved. Villagers spoke of him with admiration, sharing the story of the mountain man who had rescued a nun from certain death. Children told the tale with wide eyes, imagining the brave figure who climbed down cliffs and faced danger without fear. Sister Maria often recounted the events herself, not to boast, but to honor the courage and humanity of Elias, whose actions had changed her life. As the weeks passed, Sister Maria resumed her work in the village. She visited the families she had intended to help, delivered supplies, and tended to those who were sick. Yet her perspective had changed. She approached her work with a deeper understanding of life's fragility and the strength that could be found in unexpected people. Each time she looked toward the mountains, she thought of Elias and the night he had saved her. The memory was not just one of fear and danger, but also of hope, courage, and human kindness. Sister Maria also began to think more about the nature of heroism. Before the incident, she had believed that heroism was about bold actions in the spotlight. Now she understood that true heroism often went unseen, performed quietly by those who acted out of compassion and duty rather than recognition. Elias embodied this truth perfectly. He had risked everything for a stranger, not for reward or fame, but because it was right. Sister Maria admired him not only for his skill and bravery, but also for his humility and integrity. The bond between Sister Maria and Elias, though unspoken, remained strong. She often sent small gifts to his home in the mountains, food, blankets, or supplies, knowing that he lived in isolation and could benefit from such gestures. He accepted them quietly, continuing his life in solitude. Yet he had formed an unbreakable connection with someone whose life he had saved. The story of that night became a part of both their lives, a reminder of courage, trust, and the profound impact one person's actions could have on another. Sister Maria reflected on her experience regularly. She realized that the mountains, while dangerous, had also been a place of revelation. The night of fear and danger had shown her both her own strength and the extraordinary courage of another human being. She had faced death, yet she had survived, and in doing so, she had gained a deeper understanding of hope, compassion, and the importance of trust. The memory of dangling over the cliff, of feeling helpless, was forever intertwined with the memory of Elias, the mountain man who had appeared when she needed help most. The village slowly returned to normal. Life went on, families continued their daily routines, and Sister Maria resumed her work. Yet the story of her survival spread, inspiring others with its message of courage and humanity. People spoke of Elias with admiration, recognizing that some heroes lived quietly, away from attention, yet their actions could change lives profoundly. Sister Maria herself became an advocate for courage and hope, sharing her story to remind others that even in the darkest moments, help could arrive from the most unexpected places. Through it all, Sister Maria never forgot the lessons of that night. She understood that life was fragile and that danger could strike unexpectedly, but she also knew that kindness, courage, and selflessness were equally powerful forces. Elias had demonstrated that one person's bravery could save a life, and in doing so had left a lasting mark on her heart. She carried his example with her in every action, every decision, and every mission she undertook. Even months later, as she walked the familiar paths of the village and delivered aid to those in need, Sister Maria thought of Elias and the night he had saved her. She knew that she would never meet many people with such extraordinary skill and courage, yet she had been fortunate enough to witness it firsthand. The experience had changed her, strengthened her faith, and deepened her understanding of the human spirit. She realized that even in the face of fear, exhaustion, and danger, hope and courage could prevail, and that one person's actions could make all the difference in the world. Months had passed since the night Sister Maria had nearly lost her life on the cliff. The memory of that terrifying experience was still vivid in her mind. The cold wind, the fear of falling, the sharp ropes cutting into her wrists. Yet what stayed with her even more was the presence of Elias, the mountain man who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere to save her. She had often reflected on the night, thinking about the courage it had taken him to descend the cliff, risked every moment of his own life to rescue a stranger. In her mind, he had become more than a rescuer. He was a symbol of hope, bravery, and the quiet strength that existed in people who acted without seeking recognition. Sister Maria's life had slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. She continued her work in the village, visiting families, bringing supplies, and tending to the sick and elderly. Each visit reminded her of why she had chosen her path in life. But now there was a new depth to her purpose. She carried with her not only the desire to help others, but also the awareness of how fragile life could be, and how vital courage and kindness were in shaping outcomes. She found herself speaking more often to the villagers about resilience, hope, and the power of selfless actions. Her story had become a source of inspiration, not just about survival, but about the extraordinary impact one person could have on another. Though the villagers had been amazed by her rescue, Sister Maria remained humble about the events. She always spoke about Elias with great admiration, but never in a way that sought to glorify herself. "I would not be here today without him," she often said, her voice soft but sincere. Her focus was always on the life-saving courage of the mountain man, the one who had risked everything to pull her from the brink of death. Children listened with wide eyes whenever she recounted his actions, imagining the brave figure climbing the cliff, steady and fearless. Elders nodded knowingly, recognizing that heroism could take many forms, often quiet and unseen, yet profoundly powerful. Despite her recovery, the incident had left lasting impressions on Sister Maria's heart and mind. She often thought about fear, not just the fear she had felt on the cliff, but the fears that all humans carried in their lives. She realized that fear was natural, but it could be overcome with courage, patience, and trust in those who acted with integrity. Elias had demonstrated that fear was not a reason to remain passive. It was a challenge to act wisely and bravely. The night of her rescue had become a lesson not only about survival, but about the power of human connection and trust. Even strangers could make the greatest difference in one another's lives. Sister Maria never saw Elias again in person, for he had returned to his home high in the mountains, a place few dared to go, but his presence lingered in her thoughts constantly. She would sometimes leave small gifts at the edge of the forest near his home, food, warm blankets, and other supplies he might need. She knew that he lived a solitary life, one in which little contact with others was required or wanted. Yet, leaving these small tokens felt like a way to honor him and the life he had saved. She imagined him accepting them quietly, as he had accepted the act of saving her, with no need for praise or recognition. The villagers often spoke of the rescue as a story of courage and hope. Over time, it became a tale told not only to children, but to anyone in the village who faced challenges or difficulties. Even when all seems lost, they would say, help can come in the most unexpected ways. Sister Maria loved hearing these words repeated because she knew they carried the truth of her experience. Fear had nearly claimed her life, but courage and kindness had saved her, and the story was a reminder that no one was ever truly alone, even in the most remote and dangerous places. Sister Maria herself grew in her understanding of life and humanity. She realized that acts of kindness often required bravery, and that true heroism did not seek attention. Elias had risked his life silently, acting out of instinct and compassion, rather than a desire for reward. She thought about how many people faced dangers or struggles daily, often unnoticed by the world. His actions had shown her that even the smallest gesture of courage or kindness could have a profound impact. It was a lesson she carried into her work, encouraging others to act with empathy and bravery, no matter how challenging the circumstances. Over time, Sister Maria became a mentor to younger nuns and volunteers in the region. She shared her experiences openly, not to inspire fear, but to teach courage, compassion, and faith in humanity. She emphasized the importance of preparation, awareness, and trust, lessons learned from her terrifying night on the cliff and the remarkable actions of Elias. Her story helped others understand that even in moments of danger, one could rely on inner strength and the courage of others. The mountains had tested her, but they had also shown her the beauty of selfless heroism. Though life in the village continued, the memory of that night never faded. Sister Maria often stood on the outskirts of the village, looking toward the mountains, remembering the wind, the cliff, and the man who had appeared when she needed him most.
Eddie, what?
She thought about how fragile life could be, yet how resilient the human spirit was when guided by courage and kindness. Her own survival had given her a renewed sense of purpose and an understanding of the value of every human life. She carried that understanding into every action, every visit, and every moment she spent helping others. Sometimes Sister Maria imagined what Elias's life might be like in the mountains, quiet, solitary, but filled with a deep connection to the natural world. She thought about how few people would ever know his story, yet how much it had meant to her life. It was a reminder that heroism often went unseen, performed by those who did not seek recognition but acted because it was right. She wanted to honor that example by living her life with courage, compassion, and integrity, showing that one person's actions could create ripples that touched many lives. Even as the seasons changed, Sister Maria's respect for the mountains and the people who lived in them grew. She had always admired the strength required to survive in such harsh terrain, but now she understood it on a deeper level. The mountains were beautiful, but they were also unforgiving. They demanded respect, caution, and preparation. Yet they also revealed the extraordinary courage of those who navigated them. Elias had been one of those people, a man who understood the dangers yet acted fearlessly to save another life. Sister Maria knew that she had been given a second chance, a gift that carried responsibility. She dedicated herself even more to her work, ensuring that those who were vulnerable, sick, or in need received help. She also shared her story widely, hoping it would inspire others to act with courage and kindness. She wanted people to understand that even when situations seemed hopeless, one person could make a difference. Her life had been changed forever by Elias's actions, and she wanted to honor that gift by making her own life meaningful to others. Years later, Sister Maria would often tell her story to young volunteers, emphasizing that courage and kindness were stronger than fear. She spoke about the night on the cliff, the danger she faced, and the quiet bravery of the mountain man. She wanted listeners to understand that heroism did not need to be dramatic. It could be simple, humble, and powerful all at once. Elias had risked everything for a stranger, not for fame or reward, but because it was right. That lesson remained at the heart of everything she did. In the end, Sister Maria's experience became a story of hope, courage, and the extraordinary impact one person can have on another. It was a tale she carried in her heart, shared with others, and used to guide her work in the mountains and the village. Though she would never forget the fear she felt, she would remember more clearly the courage and kindness that had saved her life. And she would continue to live in a way that honored that gift, showing that even in the darkest moments, hope, courage, and compassion could prevail.